relationships were in a better position. Let me invite onto the show a representative of the Treatment Action Campaign. Sbongile, good morning to you. Thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, and good morning to the listeners at home.
I can imagine an incredibly difficult morning, but maybe speak to us, Bongile. Tell us about the significance of what is happening. How has this affected you? How does this affect the community workers, the projects you've been running?
These decisions are very devastating. Yes, all of us, we were waiting to see what's going to happen. But as human beings, we had that hope that because people of America are standing up to this issue and the decisions of the President Trump, we thought that the courts of America will make these executive orders to be reversed, as we've seen the waivers coming in, and we thought maybe things would be better. But we were surprised and shocked yesterday when we woke up with a lot of terminations of contracts from the USID, especially to the critical service provision that is happening, especially to the critical research that has been happening in South Africa funded by USID. So what has happened from yesterday till today, it is devastating for us, people on the ground, as patients, as also people who are always the recipient of the public healthcare. We know what these implementing partners and district support partners were doing, the impact that they were doing in our facilities, and for people just to be laid off just like that, and for services just to be disrupted just like that, it's really devastating. It's really hurting, and especially for some of us who have worked so hard and fought so much for us as people of South Africa and people living with HIV generally to access dignified services in our healthcare system, to advocate for the research and development in terms of HIV services, and also new interventions of fighting HIV. And we are just nearly 5 years towards the 2030, where we were looking forward to work hard to say as much as we had short time to meet our goals, but we are willing to work with everyone to make sure that by 2030 we don't have new infections. And that is why you find us pushing so hard to our government to say these are the gaps, this is where we want you to close the gaps. Let's work together in this and this. But with these funding terminations that just happened without any notice, without any preparation, it's really devastating. And also in a country where we have so many challenges when it comes to health provision and healthcare services. Our healthcare system already is not catering enough for our services. We have challenges of doctors. We have challenges of healthcare workers. We had austerity measures that were put on health for past few years. So this is very devastating for us. This is hurting. This is cutting deep for us as patients and communities.
Sbongile, let's speak practically then about what happens now.
What happens now is that a lot of healthcare workers in facilities which were supporting facilities have stopped working, and since the stopping order has started, we have seen a lot of challenges on the ground where people, they are going to clinic and spend more time. We know that the government has been trying to come up with suggestions to clinics. They were told that to take staff members from other places to other places, but that is not working because there is a transition period that is supposed to take place. So as we are talking to you now, people are not accessing services as they are supposed to. They are spending more time in facilities. the files are not captured, and the referral letters, it's an issue when it comes to a referral letter. Yesterday I was dealing with an issue of a woman in Limpopo who relocated from Gauteng to Limpopo due to family problems, and when she gets there, unfortunately she couldn't get time to go to the facility to ask for a referral letter. But when she gets there, luckily she still has her medication, but she was trying to prepare things, but she was told that you have to go back to Gauteng to get your referral letter so that we can provide you services. So you can understand the frustration that we are going through, where you have to go in and out to get just a referral letter, something that can be emailed, something that can be WhatsApped, and something that, and if clinics, they can just communicate. But because of the pressure that healthcare workers are working under, they are unable to do all these things because they have to push the lines, they have to provide services, they have to do extra job that they were not doing all these days. So it's really difficult, but it's just that at this time people have not yet felt the impact, and we know we have very dedicated healthcare workers. Yes, there are challenges that we often talk about, but when it comes to service provision, they always try by all means to make sure that they close the gap. They don't speak out about the challenges that they are facing on the ground, but few of those that I spoke to, they are really strained. They don't know what to do, and they are left to decide to say, how do they close the gaps in their facilities?
All right, Sibongile, we're going to leave it there for this morning. Thank you for coming onto the show, giving us that perspective. Sibongile is with the Treatment Action Campaign. So you heard there, lots of people have had to simply stop going to work because there is no money that is going to pay them. And this means that the budget that Inokodongwana is going to deliver on the 12th of March now actually has to have a clear response to how South Africa is going to close this gap. The previous budget didn't have any additional allocations to health, and at that point we already knew that there was a waiver, right? The signal was already there, but there was nothing in the budget that responded to it. Now that it's a done deal, obviously, there has to be some kind of inclusion there, and some kind of acknowledgement of what has happened and how much of the deficit the South African government is going to be picking up. All right, I'm taking your calls, 086 000 2032. That's the number to dial. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. It's 9:30, time for the latest headlines.
Good morning. Thanks, Cathy. In the headlines, the Solidarity Movement says it's concerned about the diplomatic tension between South Africa and the United States. A delegation from the movement, which includes AfriForum, met with representatives of the Trump administration in Washington. The Township Economic Commission says the registration deadline will not affect people intending to open new food outlets, including tuck shops or spaza shops. Today is the deadline for the registration of the businesses. And the Democratic Alliance in Mpumalanga says it expects the Premier Mandla Ndlovu to include plans to address water shortages in his State of the Province address today. I'll have details on these and other stories at 10.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
All right, let's continue then the show. Let me go straight to Davidton. Matlakala, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. I just want to comment about this AfriForum thing. If you do have a chance to speak to this guy, Ali Krill, I believe, please ask him to stop using these words or term which he says, South Africa and its people, because he is misleading by simply, he implies as if he's talking on my behalf as a South African. So the correct term that he must use is South Africa and AfriForum followers, because it's misleading to anyone. He talks as if he's speaking on our behalf, including the white South African. So he must use the correct term so that he doesn't continue misleading the people in the world. That's what I just want to say. Please ask him to stop using those terms.
Okay.
Yes, he's not speaking on our behalf. He's speaking on behalf of a racist minority, not the rest of the South Africans. Thank you.
Fair enough. Crispin, you're out in Durban. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and your listeners. Afrikaners used to take a kind of anti-colonial perspective, which I could really respect. I've now lost complete respect for AfriForum and Solidarity. In fact, I regard them now with contempt. At the heart of this, what they are communicating is, we benefited from land taken by force, expropriated without compensation from black people, and we benefited from race-based policies that our families campaigned for in the past. Now, though, that's not in our interests to agree with what we agreed with in the past. So in a totally unprincipled move, they say, no, we're now against race-based policies. We're against expropriation without compensation. So you are completely unprincipled, you people. You're completely unprincipled. Why do they not say, because of our commitment against expropriation without compensation, all of the land that we inherited, that was taken from other people by force, by expropriation, we are going to hand back to the state and ask them to distribute that for the kind of land reform that the country needs. Then I would start respecting them again. At the moment, I just think they've got a totally colonized viewpoint in which they run overseas to undermine the work of a democratic government. This is not about President Ramaphosa. This is about the South African people. And they are acting as if they're in no way part of the South African people, as your last caller pointed out.
Crispin, don't you think it's also concerning that we don't know who these officials that AfriForum meets with are? They seem to be nameless, faceless individuals who are apparently high-ranking officials in the White House.
Yeah, and again, you see...
Isn't that problematic? Because when you trace the history of who they have previously met with, it has been those that are part of think tanks in the U.S., those associated with certain media establishments in the U.S. And so even the idea of them meeting with officials, if somebody comes out and says, I've met with officials from the South African presidency, shouldn't they tell us who they meet with so that we know how seriously we need to take what they're doing?
Yeah, and I think, when we look at this administration, the new government in the U.S., there is we don't know what we're dealing with. You don't know the result of an intervention like this where you go, and there are people there with really strange ideas about the world, a particularly kind of extreme view of humanity, complete contempt for human rights. And you're feeding, somewhere into that, you're feeding in some really weird ideas about what happens in South Africa, casting white people here as total victims. I think it really is so stupid and so ill-advised. And I think it's going to cause deep division amongst white people as well. And white people should actually be taking the view that we belong here. We do not belong in the United States. We don't want to be refugees in the United States because we're committed to South Africa.
All right.
And that commitment is lacking.
Crispin, thanks for your input this morning. Wellington, you're in Welkom. Good morning. Good morning, Wellington. All right, I think we have an issue with Wellington's line. Christo, you're in Gqeberha. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. How are you doing today?
Good, Christo. Go for it.
Good. Cathy, I listen to your show every day and I really love it, how you interact. But I just want to make a comment. First of all, it's very sad that there are people that are not going to get medication because funding is being stopped. It's very sad. It's also sad that people in a country that's got such big unemployment are losing their jobs because of the funding. And everybody's now blaming Trump and Americans and AfriForum. But the real problem we need to find out and who to blame is the governing party, the ANC. For the last 30 years, they have stolen the country blind. I mean, I heard yesterday on the news that SAA cost the taxpayers 55 billion rand in the last 10 or 15 years. Where is that money? The mismanagement of all of this. And then the governing party also said about a week ago that only 10% of the funding from America covers the antiretroviral and that stuff, which is obviously not true. So now everybody is now angry with the wrong people. Be angry with the real culprits of why we are in this position.
Yeah, look, I think that figure is more 17%, right? That, that funding accounts for 17% of our own budget towards HIV/AIDS care. And Christo, you're right. If we are to cut corruption and end corruption, we would be able to make up these numbers in as far as the deficit is concerned.
Of course.
And
Cathy, sorry, obviously, this country is wealthy. We've got enough money to pay for everything ourselves. Why? Because we ask our neighbors and other people to give us money and fund us for these things. We've got more than enough money to pay for all this stuff. We're a wealthy country. We just need to run it and manage it better.
Christo, the proof is in the pudding, right? And realistically, when we look at how our spending has been, our public spending has been over the last couple of years, Sbongile is right when she talks about austerity measures. There has been an overall real decline in allocations towards health, towards education over the last 10 years. And so what does this moment mean for South Africa, the country dealing with the highest burden of HIV/AIDS globally?
Absolutely, and we also have the highest unemployment in the world. So these are all, self. We cause this to ourselves. These are self-inflicted problems we have. But anyway, Cathy, thank you for those comments. I really appreciate that. I as I say, I love your show and I always listen to it. And yeah, maybe the people must wake up and start complaining about, the problems we have and start focusing on who to blame and change that at the next polls or the next election.
Okay, Christo, out in Gqeberha, thanks for calling in. I guess what also makes me incredibly worried is the fact that we have seen a reduction of government spending towards NGOs in the country. And many of these community workers are the ones that are going house to house, making sure that those who are living with HIV, that they are eating well, that, they're keeping up with their medication. Tuberculosis, the same thing. And what is going to be the impact of that? When you think about your drug-resistant TBs, it's very hard for people to stay on medication. And that's the work that these volunteers sometimes and community workers are able to do. That's the gap that they fill. So without them, what then becomes the future of the progress we have made in fighting HIV/AIDS, in fighting tuberculosis?
With Ford's Blue Sky offers, get a new Ranger XL from just $5,899 per month, including our optional service plan, only when financed through Ford Credit. 10% deposit, primeless 4.75%, 40% residual. Visit your trusted Ford dealer today for Blue Sky offers, where our Ford Family Guarantee comes standard. Limited time offer while stocks last. Ford Credit is a registered credit provider and an authorized financial services provider. T&Cs apply.
Fizzy drinks and fruit juices can make our children sick. Sugar is dumped into their bodies with every sip. which could lead to obesity, heart disease, and diabetes as they age. We must protect them from drinks high in sugar. Demand a stricter health promotion levy now. Sign the petition on heala.org. That's HEALA.org.
Hey there. Need to know your TV license balance but don't want to wait? No sweat. Just send a quick SMS with your ID or TV license number to 44210. Remember, standard SMS rates apply. And presto, your balance pops right up anytime, anywhere. It's as easy as pie. So why procrastinate? Give it a try and get your info in a flash. T's and C's apply.
Cathy Mohlahlana on SAFM.
We continue the conversation on the talking point. It's your national roundtable. I'm taking your calls on 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. 086 000 2032 on the WhatsApp voice note line 0614 104 107. Vuyo, you are in Engobo. Good morning.
Morning, Cathy. How are you?
Good, Vuyo. Go for it.
Hey, Cathy, I still don't understand.
Vuyo, you still don't understand what?
How view things. Let me put this into perspective. If you take yourself and you put yourself on the shoes of
Vuyo, unfortunately, the line to you isn't great. We'll see if we can bring you up on a different line. Let me go to Mlenze in KZN. Good morning, Mlenze.
Morning, Cathy. How are you?
Good. Go for it.
Yes, Cathy. Thank you for taking my call, you and your team there. Today, I would like to reflect on two issues. One is, AfriForum, and the last one will be NYDA. I think, Cathy, as a country, we need to call, at some point, we need to call a spade a spade. We need not to protect every societal issue that is transpiring out there and try to massage it and put it in a context where it does not belong. I believe that if we can put together our legal experts, people who are very much vested into legal issues, they can find a charge that we can put against AfriForum. And that charge, I believe, can amount to treason. Why I'm calling it can amount to treason? Because I believe what AfriForum is doing, going outside there, distorting our regulations that we are putting in terms of land redistribution, is tantamount to treason, because the countries that's supposed to do business with us or transfer skills and sponsors towards South Africa, they are now pulling out. They are thinking now we are a semi-Zimbabwe, whereas that is not true. So I believe AfriForum's conduct should be treated as treason, and we should see if we can place charges against the leaders of AfriForum.
But Mlenze, isn't it concerning that you would have an organization such as the likes of AfriForum that is listened to more, that is seen as being credible or more credible than the South African government? Is that not part of where the crux of the issue is? That on this particular one, our government really is on the back foot, and should that not concern us more? So if you're to think about it, Mlenze, there could be another organization tomorrow that crops up, maybe not called AfriForum, but with its own motives, own agendas. The fact that that organization would have the opportunity to have this level of influence above what the South African government does, isn't that indicative of something?
We are correct there, Cathy. You see, here, this is a tip of an iceberg, the bigger chunk of an iceberg is sitting under the sea here, or the water here. It's a long-known or common cause in South Africa that one of our challenges that we are facing in this country, one of our challenges is that the minority has got a bigger voice over the majority. Let us not make a mistake. AfriForum does not represent white people. I've got friends who are white people. I've got comrades who are white people. AfriForum does not represent those people. AfriForum represents the smaller chunk whom I can call conservatives of white people, and in particular from Afrikaners, a part of white people, not everybody. So this challenge of smaller group in South Africa having a higher voice over the majority is a problem. And I think our government now seems to be noticing that and say, look, whether you like it or not, as long as you are not violating the rules of this country, we're going to implement progressive legislations or acts or bills that seeks to advance the revolution and advance emancipation of Africans and bring back the land that was stolen, because none of these people have got a receipt of this land they are claiming to own. Okay, let me quickly rush to NYDA. I've got a problem with
very quickly, Mlenze.
Yeah, a short one. I've got a problem with NYDA, Katie. You see, NYDA, if you can go to Facebook now, you'll find all ANC comrades, especially the young ones. They are congratulating each other, wishing each other well there. NYDA now is a component or a scheme where factions of ANC compensate each other, or they buy each other for their support, for the support in their upcoming conferences. If you did not support who's this young man from Durban, Ndlela, to emerge in NYDA, Ndlela will not allow his ANC youth league in Ethekwini to support you in the next conferences.
Okay.
So MK party need to come to the fore and take this country and make all the opportunities accessible to all young people, not ANC aligned people, young people only.
All right, Mlenze, let's leave it there. Yeah, look, and of course the NDA is making news this week because they've been having those interviews in Parliament for the new board. And yeah, it has been, unfortunately, a difficult start for some of the candidates who have not had an easy time through those interviews.
Dis-Chem's Beauty Fair is here. Enjoy unbeatable savings on skincare that loves your skin as much as you do. Glow, hydrate and radiate from expert-approved derma cosmetics to everyday essentials. We have the perfect match for your skin and your budget. Our skincare specialists are on hand, ready to help you find the best for your skin. Don't miss Dis-Chem's Beauty Fair, happening now. Stock up on skincare, cosmetics and fragrances at prices you will love. Offers valid until 16 March.
Masandawana say they're in the business of winning matches, but Amakhosi have a big agenda to stop the log leaders. Naturena confronts Tlorko. Kabuyelo battles it out with Golden Black. This is the Betway Premiership. Witness Mzansi's clash of giants. Mamelodi Sundowns FC versus Kaizer Chiefs FC. This Saturday, 1 March at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and at 3:30 p.m. on SABC radio stations. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Dr. Nikki Alexander, Dr. Thomas Chamberlain, and Dr. Jack Hodgson form a dedicated team of forensic pathologists who try to work out how and why the victim died. This series sees Nikki investigate a murder that's a carbon copy of a case from her past. She soon suspects that the killings are personal to her. But who will believe her? Meanwhile, Jack creates tension when he finds himself aligned with a police complaints investigator over the accidental shooting of a girl by armed police. And a seemingly random killing in the remote countrysides leads Nikki and Jack into the dangerous underbelly of a criminal world. This is Silent Witness, Thursdays and Fridays at 10 p.m. Starts 20 February only on S3. Open up.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You're listening to The Talking Point, your national roundtable. I'm still taking your calls on 086 000 2032. On the WhatsApp voice note line, 0614 104 107. Wellington in Welkom, good morning. You're back on the line. Good morning, Wellington. All right, clearly there's a serious issue with Wellington's line. We did try Wellington. Apologies. Vuyo Engobo? Vuyo, go for it. Let's see if your line is better.
Yes. Okay. The reckless utterances by politicians have instilled so much fear among the white society. So do we really blame AfriForum for taking such steps? Like we've heard Julius Malema singing "Shoot the Boer, Kill the Boer," which by the Human Rights Commission was referred to as a chant, not as a racist or a slogan that promotes violence. We've had political parties, Katie, that have been formed for the sole purpose of expropriating land without compensation and ensuring that they take away private ownership of land. So tell me, as the minority, where does this leave parties such as AfriForum? And to make matters worse, Kathy, we have failed to hold any of these people accountable. We have failed to hold our political leaders who are busy looting the state to the core to account. Courts, all arms of justice in South Africa have failed to hold any high-ranking politician accountable. Those that we've seen held accountable are those that are involved in factional wars that are taking place within the ruling party.
So,
and last but not least,
Vuyo,
Kathy, yes, Kathy.
Vuyo, when it comes to the comments that politicians make that are reckless to a point where it has infringed the law, I think we've all seen many of those matters go before the Equality Court. So there's recourse for that, right? When a political party is established and they say that their agenda is to push for land expropriation without compensation, they're not breaking anything within our laws.
Yes, you are not.
And it is up to the electorate to decide whether or not they want said party in power. And the electorate speaks for itself. You can go to the election results.
Yes, Kathy, I do agree with that. But when AfriForum realizes that within the South African Constitution and how the future is looking from their perspective, they realize that there's no longer security, there's no longer sense of safety for them in South Africa, and they're opting to go to outside organizations and outside countries to seek assistance. Do we really?
But what is the sense of security, Vuyo? And how rational is the sense of insecurity? Right? There must be a reasonability to what you're talking about.
Yes, you pass a law that promotes expropriation of land without compensation. Which, okay, fine. The law does define that private ownership of land will be protected by all means. But yet, in the same token, people representing the same organization will go out on public platforms and make such reckless utterances with regards to which actually makes you doubt whether this law will be implemented accordingly. So what do you do in such an instance? Do you sit back and wait for things to happen, knowing for a fact that the amount of lawlessness that is taking place in South Africa and the failure to hold people accountable who are partaking in such lawlessness is close to being non-existent? What do you do in such instances?
Okay. So, Vuyo, you believe that AfriForum is justified?
It's fully justified. If I was in the position of being a white Afrikaner in South Africa, I would also opt for the same. The public sentiment towards white South Africans in South Africa
do you also believe that their calls, these very same white Afrikaners that you are referencing, that there are calls for self-determination, that those should be supported, that the initiative for separate development, that should be supported.
If you like-minded type of people, then I don't disagree with them. Because currently myself, if I were to find people who are like-minded with me, who do concur with me in how I view things, I would prefer that we set up our own place with our own code of morals and our own way of doing things. Because currently what is happening is just not working out, Kathy.
Okay.
It's just not working.
All right, Vuyo's views out in Ngobo. Mr. D, you're in the Eastern Cape. Have you brought us some free deliveries, Mr. D?
Hi, Cathy.
Hi.
Yeah, Cathy. If you look at the true history of this country, even long before the white Europeans came in, the history shows clearly that the very first people that were here were the Khoisan. No one else was here. So it means they are the only indigenous people. Everybody else, including the black Africans, are also foreigners in this country. If you look at it, the black people are North Africa's indigenous people, not Southern. So that they should stop calling themselves indigenous people in this country. And also, I just want to mention, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem if black people own land in this country, or anybody whatsoever wants to make an economic contribution, whether it be through agriculture or whatever means, and irrespective of where they're coming from or what they're looking like. But as I said, what I do have a problem is when they call themselves indigenous people of this country. And also, Cathy, these people, the black people, they phone in on a regular basis on platforms like these, and they write in newspapers, and they comment on television. But the people who preside on those platforms, they don't tell them, listen, my friend, your facts are not correct according to history. Yeah, that's basically all that I wanted to say.
Okay, Mr. D.
Okay.
We're back to that debate now. Didn't we had this conversation 3 weeks ago? Who is indigenous to the land? And then now we must go back to the Constitution, and then I think we must just have one big debate, 2 hours, and have the historians fight it out for them amongst themselves and settle it once and for all of us. 10 o'clock.
In our top story, Solidarity speaks on diplomatic tensions between South Africa and the US and Zelensky in Washington ahead of a crucial meeting with his counterpart. Good morning. The Solidarity Movement says it's concerned about the diplomatic tension between South Africa and the United States. A delegation from the movement, which includes Afrikaner interest group AfriForum, met with representatives of the Trump administration in Washington. They discussed concerns on issues including the expropriation bill, which President Cyril Ramaphosa signed into law last month. The movement alleges the legislation seeks to forcefully take land from white owners. The movement's head of international liaison, Jaco Kleinans.
we are willing to use our contacts in America to the benefit of all in South Africa. So I think the accusations of treason are based on false information. We are not in America at the moment to engage with the Trump administration and with the American Congress in any way to have anything negative installed against South Africa. Our visit to America are primarily focused to the benefit of the South African economy and the people of South Africa.
The Township Economic Commission says the registration deadline will not affect people intending to open new food outlets, including tuck shops or spaza shops. Today is the deadline for the registration of the businesses. President Cyril Ramaphosa had ordered the registration of the businesses in November last year in response to issues of food safety. This followed cases related to food poisoning in which at least 20 children died. The Commission's President Beki Twala says the deadline only applies to owners of existing shops.
It simply means as well, if you want to start a spaza shop, let's say from Monday, you can then start that process. You finish the process, then you open. Meaning, in other words, you won't open a spaza shop before you then complete the process if it's a new spaza shop. The whole registration is for those that are operating currently without permits, without having the trade permits, without having the COA, the certificate of acceptability, without also having the documents that are needed in terms of food handling to make sure that our consumers are protected.
The Western Cape Social Development Department has welcomed Postbank's plan to increase to 70 its service points for switching from the Social Security Agency, SASSA's gold cards to the Postbank's black cards. The department says Postbank in its presentation before Parliament said it would boost its sites in the province over the next 3 weeks. The deadline for the switch has been extended to the 20th of next month. The department's minister is Jaco Lund.
This is what we've been calling for after seeing the chaos across the province as SASSA grant beneficiaries try to get their cards replaced. Last week, I said that we were fighting for our fair share of the increased service points. This was because we found that on average the Western Cape Postbank service points were expected to handle almost 24,000 beneficiaries per site, while the national average was around 8,500.
The Democratic Alliance in Mpumalanga says it expects the Premier, Mandla Ndlovu, to include plans to address water shortages in his State of the Province address today. The DA's Bosman Grobler says residents of the province need urgent solutions to the water crisis.
To make matters worse, the Gertsebande District Municipality has a supply shortfall of 18.45 megalitres per day, and the Nkangala District Municipality has a supply shortfall of 88.31 megalitres per day because of a decrease in dam levels related to drought conditions. Given the fact that all 17 municipalities in the province are suffering from persistent water shortages, the DA expects Premier Ndlovu to detail a clear plan or strategy that will address the shortages in various municipalities.
And finally, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has arrived in Washington ahead of a crucial meeting with his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump later today. The meeting comes after Trump appeared to have eased his attitude towards Zelensky, describing him as very brave. Earlier, Trump had called the Ukrainian president a dictator. The BBC's Tom Bateman has the details.
At the White House, the Ukrainian leader is likely to sign a framework agreement with Mr. Trump that is said to give the US access to future revenues from state-owned mineral and fossil fuel resources in Ukraine, including oil and gas, as part of a jointly controlled fund which, in part, would help pay for reconstruction. Mr. Trump has said the deal is about the US getting its money back after 3 years of military assistance to Ukraine. But crucially, it is not believed to offer any US security guarantees, a core demand of Mr. Zelensky.
Recapping the top story, the Solidarity Movement says it's concerned about the diplomatic tension between South Africa and the United States. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A convicted murderer on death row, a vicar in a quiet English town, and a maths teacher trapped in a cellar. Cross paths in the most unexpected way. Jefferson Grief is on death row in an American prison for brutally murdering his wife. But it turns out that Grief has a gift. He can solve crimes from inside his cell. English journalist Beth Davenport needs grief's help. Janice, a woman who recently helped Beth, has gone missing. The last Beth heard from Janice? A text with a blurry image of a man lunging towards the camera. Will grief crack the case in time? Exactly how is Janice's local vicar involved? And is it really possible to solve a crime before it is committed? Tune into Inside Man, Monday to Wednesday at 9 p.m. Starts 12 February only on S3. Open up.
The intelligence of varsity students will be witnessed on the field of play between UJ ladies and UCT ladies. They both want to kick off the new season with 3 points. Who will pass this test with a distinction, UJ or UCT? This is the Hollywood Best Super League. Catch the varsity derby between University of Johannesburg ladies and University of Cape Town ladies the Sunday 2 March at 2:30 p.m. live on SABC 1. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Honey, what are you doing?
I'm stretching for tonight.
I thought you're not dancing at bachelorette parties anymore.
Baby, we need the money to put Johnny through matric mos.
And what's the police uniform for?
The clients feel safer when I wear it.
No, man, just sell your bucky to We Buy Cars. They give the best prices and they pay you within minutes.
Okay, but can I just go and dance one more time, please? You know how much I love it.
No, the buyer's already on his way here.
Wow, okay.
Strapped for cash? Just sell your vehicle to We Buy Cars. The easiest way to sell your car by far.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You're listening to The Talking Point. Thanks for tuning into the show this morning. Welcome to the second hour. It's 8 after 10 o'clock. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be looking at the preservation of indigenous languages in South Africa. What do we need to be doing differently in order to win the fight? And I know that there'll be so many parents across this country who will be thinking about the question of the mother tongue, right? Some of the difficulties that parents have when it comes to actually making sure that their children can speak their mother tongues. So we can have that conversation shortly. Before we do, lots of WhatsApp voice notes from the open line. Thank you again for your engagement, for calling into the show. We do continue the conversation.
Good morning, Cathy. It's Enoch from Naledi. Regarding the issue, Donald Trump cutting off the funds via PEPFAR. For me, I think what he's doing is correct. I mean, African countries, we are always relying on other countries to survive, whereas we have minerals. So it's time now that we use our own minerals so that we can get what we are offering to the other countries in terms of what we offering to the European countries. I mean, we are crying with the jobs here, this, that. Our own minerals can make us survive. So let's start using our own minerals so that we can survive. Thank you.
Good morning, Cathy. This is Anonymous from Limpopo speaking. Just relating to the AfriForum and Solidarity story, I think they're a litmus test for the psyche of a large portion of the Afrikaner community and form settlers in this country and their entitlement to South Africa's land, or our land, if you will, and the cheek with which they treat the government and its authority over this country. In most other countries, something would have been done to chastise these organizations for their instability that they're trying to sow within the country. And some people have called it terrorism, and I think it's something close to that. It's just unfortunate the way things have gone.
Morning, this is Cathy. Morning, Cathy. Cathy, izolo wethu you had umayor I'm not sure Landa ukuyo, but I think I'm like Zingis. And unfortunately, we didn't have a We did not have a way of letting us to call in. I wanted, this is Cathy. No, man, injustice that she's doing to the people, there's nothing that she answered. How I wish we were able to open the lines, Isolo. Hence, I'm saying this we end today. These mayors, the less I say, the better.
Good morning, Sis Cathy and your team. This is Sakele Ntsogwini from Kamhlabi Lingana. You know, Sis Cathy, I believe that it is about time the AfriForum admitted that it had not anticipated things to turn out the way they have when they decided to go to the US to report our government policies to Donald Trump. Thank you.
Good morning, Katie, and your producer and all the listeners of SAFM. Katie, I like to talk regard to those criminals here around in Western Cape. If the Minister of Police or soldiers can come and visit here in Cape Town as a surprise, let's say maybe can visit at midnight, around by 1 o'clock midnight, 2 o'clock around there, and then he might not supposed to tell the media and come and search the whole location and the squatter camp. I promise you, Katie, they will find a lot of firearms that is not supposed to be. So it's the only thing that also can fight the crime here in Western Cape, because there are a lot of firearms here that doesn't have license. So that is my concern for today. Sia from Cape Town. Happy Friday, Katie. Thank you.
Cathy, Dumela, AfriForum. You know, Cathy, AfriForum, according to me, the way I see, they see that South Africa is going down. Actually, they want South Africa to go down so that they can say, you see, black people can lead. Now, the thing is, because they associate with Ramaphosa, now they see that ANC, very soon, it will go down. So now they don't know who will govern in future. Hence, they try by all means to destabilize our country. Skosana here.
Hi, Cathy. This is Mtembu from Gqeberha. So I want to talk about the wage bill in the public service, right? We have many ministries, many deputy ministries, and even the DDGs of different departments. These people get paid a lot of money. And we keep saying, and the political elite keeps telling us that there is no money and they are cutting spend on health, care, and education. Why are we putting up with this? Tim.
Okay, Lhasa, we are recording 3, 2, 1, go.
A cold case is opened 39 years later after the body of a young man is discovered in a derelict building. There are 4 suspects. Suspect 1, a clergyman. Suspect 2, an eminent entrepreneur.
I really, those people are always shady.
Suspect 3, a community worker.
Hey, what are you saying?
And suspect 4, a wheelchair-bound husband caring for his wife.
Hey, and the fella you can't.
Each has a secret to hide. As their lies unravel, the people that they love the most begin to wonder what else they might be capable of. Nothing in this case is black and white. Can you ever really know the people closest to you? What secrets have they buried? Tune into Unforgotten Season 1, Monday to Wednesday at 9 p.m. Starts 24 February only on S3. Tabo, don't tell me that the script freaked you out. Where are you?
Hi, my name is Kamogelo and I am a lifesaver. Through a chance encounter with the DKMS Africa team at a nearby mall, I decided to register to become a stem cell donor and potentially give someone else a second chance at life. Every life is precious, and after I was made aware that I could give someone else a second chance at life, all it took to register was 3 swabs, a quick and easy process. You too could be a potential lifesaver in the making. Register to become a stem cell donor at dkmsafrica.org.
Hi, I'm Komoto Keiji Mweketi, and I believe in music's ability to connect, to heal, to remind, and to bring joy. And each week on my Saturday and Sunday show Seasons, right here on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, I endeavor to do just that. So join the movement of Seasons every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's addictive. You might invite a friend. Seasons, only on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, with me, KG Mwekezi.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Well, for this hour, we take a look at preserving our indigenous languages. Let me invite onto the show, welcome Hasiande, or rather Simon Hasiande, who is the producer of XKFM. It's an SABC station dedicated to broadcasting in the Khoisan language. Simon, good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Good morning, Simon.
Good morning, Cathy. How are you?
There we go. I'm well, thank you. Thank you so much for making time for us. I know we've had to steal you from the other side just to be with us during this time. But an important conversation for us to have when it comes to the preservation of indigenous languages. And what you guys do at XKFM is really quite special, isn't it, Simon? Speak to us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, indeed it is. At XKFM, we preserve the language. I can say what we normally do is the language that we speak, let me rather start with X. The X is for the Kung and the K is for the Kwe. That's why they named the station name XKFM. So there are two tribes who are in Platfontein, and all of us came from Namibia. Yeah, now we settled in Smithrift from 1990, and from there we relocated to Platfontein, where it is. The station started 2000. 18 August was the time that the late Minister Kasiburi opened the station for us. So normally what we do, we record the story for the older people, and then we play it on the radio station. I think last year in August, we go to Namibia and record the older stories of the people who are still in Namibia and came and play it on the station XKFM. So that's how we preserve the language.
Let's speak about that dynamic, right, between South Africa, Namibia, and also how the preservation of this language has its roots in Namibia.
Okay, thank you, Cathy. We as the same people, we started from, as they're saying, the people was in South Africa and then they go to Namibia due to that. We moved to Namibia. From there, we came back to South Africa again. So the language that we are speaking now, it's the language. It's fluent. The older people speak it fluently, but now the youngster they are mixing it with Africans. The preservation for the language, we want to keep it so that the younger, like me, myself, Simon, and the youngster who are coming up, they must never lose the language. Yeah.
So, given the dynamics of growing up in a modern world, Simon, maybe speak to me about your own journey and learning your language. And, sometimes one may be fluent in their language, but not necessarily fluent enough to hold or to be able to speak for a whole 3 hours on air without using English substitutes or substitutes from any other language, and just speaking that one language on its own.
Yeah, Cathy, the presenter now they are mixing the language. Now, the older people can speak it fluently because they don't know most of Afrikaans or English. So we who have went to school and there are words that maybe I can't speak it in my language, then I use Afrikaans for it and then also English. So normally the youngsters don't speak fluently the language. So that's why what we are doing at XKFM is we, as the youngster or the people who are working at XKF, we went to the older people to record that language, which is, yeah, with that language. So we wanted it to not to die as the language. We went to the older people to record that language. So if me, I don't know the language, the word which is in English, am going to not going to say it in my language. I'm going to explain it to the elder, and then she or he will understand it, and then told me in the language, so that I can understand it and then talk it on the radio. But as you are saying, we are not as 3 hours when you are on air. You can't talk about only the Kho and the Kwe language on air. You are mixing it with English and Afrikaans.
Let me bring in Naledi Maponopono, who is a PhD candidate at the University of Cape Town's African Languages and Literature section. She's also a newly appointed member of the PanSALB board. Naledi, good morning to you.
Good morning, Cathy, and to all your listeners.
Listening to what Simon has been telling us, the journey of trying to preserve, the Kukwe language for XKFM and their listeners, it is quite a delicate process. It sounds like it when it comes to making sure that a language doesn't lose, for lack of a better phrase, its purity.
Yes, language is a very complex phenomenon, because language is derived in a context where people are trying to live and understand one another. So through that process, it's where people develop the coding in terms of how they're going to express themselves, how they're going to describe the environment, and how they're going to converse with each other. So in a context like South Africa, where you have a sordid history of racial oppression, a lot has been done that has contaminated indigenous African languages because they were basically being wiped out from existence. So with that said, it is then quite a challenge to make sure that these languages do not die out. And even from a perspective of understanding that language is an expression and language is an identity to someone. So within the history that we come from as a country, people's existence was literally being wiped out. So the languages themselves were seen as inferior to English and Afrikaans. So this is why then even in schools, it's very difficult to have our languages seen within the same academic standard as English and Afrikaans. And this is then what causes our languages to die. A language doesn't die because the people are dying. So you will find that there are many, for example, Xhosa speakers or Zulu speakers or Sotho speakers that speak these languages in the country, and they're in majority. So the issue is not that no one is speaking the language necessarily. It is that the language has been seen as inferior, and this has been driven to the extent that even the African language speakers themselves have an attitude towards their own languages. They are the first people to deny their own languages. And this is not by coincidence. It is manufactured. And it also comes to the point of understanding that because of the history that we have, it has been engraved in us that whatever is African is inferior. And therefore, even the language that you speak, how you express yourself, is not good enough to find itself in a book or in a classroom. So we are fighting with that kind of history, and it's very hard to undo by the way, because these things are deeply ingrained in our mindset as a society.
Naledi, I want to go back to a statement you made around language being used for expression and for identity. Unpack that a bit more for me, please.
Sure. So, let me use Sapir-Whorf hypothesis. Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is a hypothesis, a linguistic relativity hypothesis that says that a person views the world through the language that they speak. So meaning, if you are to go to Antarctica today, you will find that in Antarctica they have over 50 names for ice because that is the context in which they live in. If you speak to a Xhosa speaker, for example, you will find that a Xhosa speaker cannot differentiate between shades of color because in isiXhosa, the colors are standard. So if something is red, ibomvu, it is just red. We don't have maroon, we don't have burgundy. But when you come to English speakers in their worldview, they have shades of color and so on. There are many examples also. So it means that someone's language is deeply tied to their identity, who they are, how they see the world. It also comes up in how people reason, how they see mathematics, how they see, how they think about different topics in terms of how people conduct themselves. So within that particular context, the language is the one that is the core of the identity, and then it comes out as an expression. So through speaking someone's language, you can understand how do they view the world, what is important to them. For example, within the African context, particularly in isiXhosa language, cows are a very important part of our culture, and so we have different names for different types of cows and their colors. So by speaking that language, you get to understand, oh, this is very important in this culture. So this is what it means to say that language is an integral part of someone's identity. It speaks to who they are and how they see the world and how they reason about a lot of things. Because you must remember that language is born from people in a particular context trying to speak or to understand one another. And then they come together and speak in one language and form an identity as a group of people who speak that particular language. So it's tied to the identity. Who are you? Yes.
Thank you so much for that explanation, Naledi. In fact, it's something I want us to pick up a little bit more on the other side of the 10:30 news headlines. You're listening to The Talking Point. We're speaking about the preservation of indigenous languages and why is it important for us to preserve these languages firstly, but it of course also comes down to the issue of mother tongue. And if we are to use what Naledi has said as a basis then for the conversation, right, around it being, language being so deeply associated with one's identity, what does that mean in 2025 today, where you will have people who speak multiple languages, whose mother tongue might not necessarily be what their parents' mother tongue is, right? You'll have kids whose parents' mother tongue maybe is Xhosa, is Zulu, but their kids, their mother tongue is English. So how do we reconcile those two? It's 10:30, time for the latest news headlines.
Thank you, Cathy. In the news headlines on SAFM, I am Ondela Mbana, and a very good morning. The city of Tshwane has warned that South Africans who have registered food outlets, including tuck or spaza shops, on behalf of ineligible foreign nationals face arrest. The Solidarity Movement says it is concerned about the diplomatic tension between South Africa and the United States. A delegation from the movement, which includes Afrikaner interest group AfriForum, met with representatives of the Trump administration in Washington. And Egypt says Israel and Hamas have started intensive discussions in Cairo on the next phase of the Gaza ceasefire. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
All right, well, taking a look at your markets this morning. The rand is trading at 18 rand 49 to the dollar, 23 rand 27 to the pound, and 19 rand 22 to the euro. Markets in Asia ended today's trading session in a sea of red. The JSE has extended losses during mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are trading weaker. Gold is trading at $2,858, platinum at $948 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $73.34 a barrel.
I'm Michelle Constant. Join the JSB crew and I every Saturday and Sunday morning between 7 and 10 a.m. We promise to keep you informed and entertained with innovation, culture, cars, travel, life learnings, environment, and of course, your big fat juicy. Small stories, big ideas, massive inspiration. The Jet Set Breakfast on SAFM.
Hi, I'm Cathy Mohlahlana, and I believe in music's ability to connect, to heal, to remind, and to bring joy. And each week on my Saturday and Sunday show Seasons, right here on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, I endeavor to do just that. So join the movement of Seasons every Saturday and Sunday, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. It's addictive. You might invite a friend. Seasons, only on SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, with me, KG Mohlahlana.
Cathy Mohlahlana on SAFM.
We continue the conversation on the talking point. We're looking at the preservation of indigenous languages. Naledi Mabonobono is a PhD candidate at the University of Cape Town's African Languages and Literature Department, but also a board member of the Pan-SALB board. And Simon Hasiyande is a producer at XKFM, and that's an SABC station that's dedicated to broadcasting in the Khoisan language. Both of them are on the line. Simon, do you want to add something here just on what Naledi has said about language and how language becomes an expression of one's identity and how deeply tied to identity language is?
Yes, Kathy, I want to add something. As you know, language, they say if you don't speak your language, you are lost. So language is very important. Wherever you are, wherever you go, it's your identity. You must speak your language. Be proud of it. So you know what they're saying. If you don't speak your language, you are lost. So to be on that note, Naledi is quite she's quite right. When I don't speak my language, it's not good for me. As things, I'm trying also to learn the other language. Yeah, because when in South Africa you must speak all the languages, or you must learn all the languages. So now there are other people who want to try to speak our language, and we learn them, but sometimes on our, you know, when they say the discrimination is also part of it. When you speak your language, some people are laughing at you, and then you are shy to speak the language. Because when we go to town, if you want to speak your language, you are shy to speak it, which is not a good thing. So what normally you do, we speak our language wherever we go. So people are asking, what language are you speaking? Then we told them that we are speaking the Kong and the Kwe language. There are most of the people who don't know that language. In South Africa, most of the people don't know the language. The language that we are speaking now is only in, we're speaking it Northern Cape, which is in South Africa, and then in Botswana, and then in Namibia, and also in Angola, where our older parents came from. They came from Angola, Namibia, and Botswana. Some of them are in there. As I can see, if I greet you, I will say there are two languages, which is Kong. The Kong say Amatwa, and then the Kwe say Bamba. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Simon. Naledi, how do we then make sense of a generation of South Africans that are growing up with English as primarily the language that they speak. Yes, it's not their mother tongue, but it qualifies to be their mother tongue. With how education is structured in our country, they go to preschools, high school, primary school, high school, and that is the language, the primary language through which they are taught. And I wonder how you assess the impact of that on the identity of these children.
Sure, thanks, Cathy. And I'm one of those children because that's exactly what fueled the fire in me to try to find these solutions within an education context for mother tongue, for indigenous African language speakers. So, firstly, we have to define what a mother tongue is, and from a linguistic perspective, we refer to it as the language or native language that a person acquires first in their early childhood development. So it's usually from their parents or the primary caregiver. We also then have different perspectives on how we view the mother tongue. So it's not a homogeneous concept. So from a linguistic perspective, we argue that it's the language that you naturally acquire without formal instruction. From a social cultural perspective, we say it's the language that is tied to one's cultural background, traditions, and community. And from an educational perspective, we say that it is the language in which a child is initially taught, which may differ from the home language in multilingual societies such as South Africa. And from a legal perspective, in some countries, a mother tongue is defined as an official language through institutions such as the courts or, in our country, the Constitution. So in our country, we have a fascinating linguistic landscape in that we've got 12 official languages. And also, a mother tongue is not necessarily a single language. You can have multiple mother tongues, particularly when you live in a multi-environment, in a multilingual environment. So language is not a problem, and language needs to be viewed as a resource. So when we advocate for indigenous African languages, we are not saying cancel the other over the other. That's what we call deficit thinking. So a person is not you cannot program a person and say, you must speak this now. Because a person, even children, research has shown that children make their own language choices because they're autonomous. So they decide, like in a multilingual household, like as you say, our children go to school where the dominant language is English or Afrikaans. So you decide in your household that, okay, since in my particular house, let me make an example of myself, I decide that I'm going to give my children instruction in isiXhosa. Even if they respond in English, at least they've understood my instruction in isiXhosa. So we contend with this, and we must know that the issue of language is deeply political. So you have to negotiate with the overarching English dominance, and you negotiate this by giving your children the opportunity to know that, okay, in as much as I am your parent, I'm Xhosa speaking, your father is Tswana speaking, it's important that you know that these are the things that are part of our culture, and part of our culture is our language. And while you may learn English at school, this is the cultural context in which you come from. So it comes back to us as a society to embrace multilingualism. When we advocate for indigenous African language, we're not saying that we must do away with English and Afrikaans, because that is deficit thinking. We have to use language as a resource, and even in the classroom, use African languages as resources, because the mother tongue, or the language of first instance, is where you start to reason and how you end up understanding particular concepts, and particularly within an educational setting. It helps children a lot to be able to comprehend something in their language of first instance. And for many children in this country, the language of first instance is not English. However, they are forced to learn in English because that is the language of teaching and learning. And then we have studies that come out to say our children can't read for meaning and they can't comprehend. But if we qualitatively check that, we should check in what language were they tested. Because you would find that if they were perhaps tested in plain particular concept or to read, they probably would have been able to do it because that is the language of their first instance. So, wholly my point is saying we must embrace multilingualism. language is a resource. It helps us to communicate. It helps us to understand things. Without language, nothing can be done. So the only reason why we advocate to say our languages should not die, we should not allow them to die because they form part of our identity, but because in the classroom, a simple example of mathematics. Mathematics is quite a complex, or it perceived to be quite a complex phenomenon. So many scholars, like my former vice chancellor, Prof. Mamukhet, would say, maths is not complicated, and because she's a mathematician, but she talks a lot also about the issue of language when it comes to acquiring mathematics. For example, when you count in isiXhosa, you actually add. You do, when you come to the number 10, you actually say, when you go to 11, you say 10 plus 1, 10 plus 2. So already, as the Xhosa-speaking learner, you are already knowing that, 10 just by counting in your language. This is why I'm saying language and multilingualism is a resource. So we need to use language to advance society and not have deficit thinking, to think that one language must cancel the other out. It will not work like that. And particularly in a South African context where it's a multilingual society. So we need to embrace that. And there are learners that are more proficient in English over and above their indigenous over and above their mother tongue, and that is not a doing of their own. It's the context in which we find ourselves in South Africa. But to me, there's an opportunity there to say, even though this is the case, enter our African languages within the schools. Do not treat language as something abstract. Treat it as a resource. If children are struggling to understand a concept in English, use the languages that the learners speak. You can even use the learners as a resource. When I lecture, I use my students as a resource to say, I'm trying to explain a concept and it's hard. It's an academic context. I explain it. And then I ask then I say, does any student here speak Tshivenda? And the student will say yes. And then I explain the concept and then I say, okay, would you be able to put this in Venda so that the other Tshivenda speakers could also understand this in the matter? And the student will do that. And because I'm conscious of the fact that there can be a barrier to learning if someone cannot comprehend a particular concept within another language. And I don't speak all the languages, but at least I'm conscious to understand that language can be used as a resource to make teaching and learning a positive experience for all language speakers in the classroom. So this is how we should view language in my learned opinion.
You know, Naledi, one of my colleagues was just sharing a story with me about his children. You know, he speaks Sepedi, but he says his children speak English, and they know how to speak Sepedi, but they choose to speak English. They're now grown in varsity, and they speak English, right? And you know, he tells of how their grandmother would always chase them around and tell them, speak Sepedi, you know, blalang Sepedi. But they would refuse, and they would just continue to speak in English. So they would speak to them in Sepedi, but they would respond in English. And it goes back to what you said about language being political, and therefore there is that contestation. But how do we get rid of that contestation? Why must it exist in the first place, you know? And I don't know sort of what other people's experiences are. I can only speak about what I see in sort of my own context, where if you're in a shopping mall and there are Afrikaans families there, they're all speaking Afrikaans. Nobody's there's no contestation. But when it comes to, let's say, maybe my family or other families around, it's English, and then there's isiXhosa. Somebody will respond in isiXhosa, somebody responds in isiZulu, and there's this mishmash of everything sort of going on.
Yeah, because as I said in the beginning, we have inherited, we come from a very difficult past as this country where, you know, of racial divisions. And part of that, which, you know, I think Steve Biko in his Black Consciousness would have spoken about how we need to love ourselves and we need to love where we come from. And he was conscientizing us to remember, even though amidst the fact that we are being told that your language is inferior, your hair is inferior, your brain is inferior, you still need to remember that you are not. And it's by giving us this theory of black culture, of conscientizing us about the self during a very difficult time. So that is not going to be an easy thing to achieve, because historically, as an African identity is so complex because of the history that an African body has had to undergo. And this is not to say that people who speak English, therefore they do not love themselves. It's a very simplistic argument to make, because being African has a complexity. Because, there's a lot of debate, even in decolonial scholarship, of what is it to be African. So it's a contentious topic, because we've had all these difficulties in the past where we are continuously told that we are inferior, the color of our skin, our hair, our bodies, and our languages. And this is not going to go away overnight, because it's a process. And it's a process, and also there are forces that perpetuate that there must be a dominance of other languages over others. And when this started, it was forced. And because if you think of June 1976 uprising, it was a political uprising. Fundamentally, those school learners were fighting against the fact that they are being taught in Afrikaans and they don't understand what is being said, nor do the teachers know how to teach in Afrikaans. So language is deeply political. And so the structures that, the superstructures that are left behind post the apartheid, post the colonialism, they are still there. And they still influence what languages are languages of teaching and learning, what languages take preference over others, even though we've got a constitution. So it's going to take a lot of time to undo even the thinking, because there are a lot of studies done where you find that the African language speaker also has an attitude towards their own language. And this is not their own doing, by the way. It is conditioned for them to believe that.
Okay.
But at the same time, we are not saying that we cannot simply say that if a person can't speak their mother tongue, it is therefore the fact that they are not African enough. No, there's a complexity with being African, and English has become part of being African, and Afrikaans has also become part of being an indigenous African language speaker.
Okay. Let me bring in Savage. Savage in Attridgeville. Good morning to you. Hello, Savage. All right. It looks like I've lost Savage on the line there. Michaels, you're out in Kabeja. Good morning.
Morning. Language is not just political. Language is actually divine and spiritual. And this is one of the reasons why colonialism deliberately and intentionally made sure that the language that we spoke, right, was seen as inferior and erased and replaced by their language, because it's spiritual and it's divine. If I can give you just a classic example, the Chinese speak Mandarin, and they are so highly developed. Indians, they speak Hindi, and they are highly developed. Malaysians, the Arabs, they all speak their language. They don't speak English, and they are highly developed. So with all this English that we speak, how come we are so not developed and wallowing in poverty? It's because the spiritual and divinity of our language has been erased. So there's a disconnection between how we develop in our language and so on and so forth. And what I find interesting, though, is that you find Africans that they prefer their children to speak. In fact, they see it as something fancy or beautiful for their child to speak English. They applaud and they clap. But here's the thing. When an English person or a European speaks an African language, we all clap for him. But who claps for us when we speak, say, French or English? No one. So you see where the colonial mentality creeps in. That's all I wanted to say.
All right, Marcos, thanks for that contribution. Savage in Attridgeville, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. Cathy, I need to start with saying knowing many languages makes you a good servant and a good entertainer. It doesn't make you a good master, doesn't make you a good leader. You can even check in history. The Belgians would have been speaking Lingala now, the French would have been speaking all the Sahel region languages. Even white people in South Africa don't speak Zulu. Everywhere. We are so obsessed about learning other people's languages, and that only makes us good servants. Like now, yes, Panyas and his people, they want to teach our children Mandarin, only to be good servants to the Chinese and nothing else. The Chinese are tired of trying to speak English and any other language. Language is a very good point of identity. And if you start learning other people's cultures, they don't care about yours and they start undermining you. So it's really, really, really disappointing that now we can't even translate critical subjects into our own language. Like your guest was saying, mathematics is too complex. It's not complex. I mean, if we can do Afrikaans, maths, the Wortel van Vier Mal 30, and we can't even produce one of our native languages to mathematics and other subjects, we're really not taking ourselves serious as Africans. I sort of understand the Swahili part, sort of, but no, we need to take pride of what we have, stick to it, learn it properly, and distribute it to our servants, not us now learning languages to be other people's servants, Cathy. Thanks.
Savage, you know, part of what I notice sometimes in this conversation is that we have it from two prisms. One is from the ideal, so what we would like to see happen, and not always from what is our current reality.
I hear what you're saying, but we need to start being proud
Do you understand what I'm saying to you? Because as we speak, we have young people in schools learning English, being produced out of the schooling system with English as the language, as the medium of instruction. So that is the reality of where we are as a society right now. And I wonder then how we are able to tie back some of these aspects that Naledi has so well highlighted into our present. Even on something as such as identity, which is the core, right, of one's being.
Yes, and I hear you very well. It's our current reality, but we can undo it. It will take time, as much as it took them time to write Bible in all the languages. At some stage, the reality was that the black man didn't understand anything about the Bible, but they translated it to us. Today, you didn't swear there's no English Bible. So we can do that bit by bit and return back to our African identity. The little we have here, we perfect it, and we cannot now add Mandarin. Tomorrow we'll be trading with another country. We'll be learning their language. We're going to just continue being good servants and never be a leader in everything, Cathy. Thanks.
Okay. All right, Savage. Thanks for that view. Let me take this WhatsApp voice note.
Good morning, Cathy. This is Mabena, Middleburg in Mpumalanga. This topic of languages touches me, in my very core. As a full-time e-hailing driver, I see parents, coming into my car day in and day out, black parents, all the time, full-time speaking with their kids in English. I don't know how did this come about. This is such a modern trend. It's so prevalent. I don't know what happened, or maybe did their teachers in those different schools somehow influence them to say, no, for them to pick up this language, you must also speak to them in that language at home. I don't know what is the cause, but it's so prevailing, it's so painful to see.
Hello, SAFM listeners. This theme of language is not taking us nowhere. We must learn English, and everybody must learn its own language. We will just teach one another. They must not bring it at school. If I'm a baby, I'll learn Zulu on the way and Venda on the way. We must learn only English. Don't always say our language is not good thing, because many things that I'm working here now, there's no things of in Spade or Zulu. Fuels everything. I'm working with chemical here. It's English. So you have only English people who came with this thing. Must learn English.
Okay, those are some of the views of our listeners. Simon, let me give you a chance then to come in and also give us your parting shot.
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, I hear what the other people were saying. Yeah, indeed, it is very important to know your language. You know, something that I just heard what other have been saying. We know in they say there is 12 language, national language, but now we have the Kondokwe, which is not recognized. It is not recognized. So now most of the people they are speaking English to the children, but we as a Kondokwe at school, our children are learning English and Afrikaans, but when they come back to home, they speak the languages, which is the Khoekhoe. Now what we are doing, they are trying to write the Bible in our language, and we don't have the dictionary yet. But there are people who can write the language who are in where we are staying at Platfontein in outside Kimberley. They are the people that they write the languages. So now we are trying to write the language also, so that people must know there are other languages that are also in South Africa. In the national, they say there are 12 languages where there are other languages which are not recognized, which is the Khoekhoe. So that's why the SABC give us the radio station where we also speak the languages. We speak it, but the presenter here don't speak it fluently. But we are trying to do that so that the children of today must not forget where they are coming from, the culture, and so on. So they also must not forget, yeah.
All right, Simon, thank you for that. And I guess preservation of language does not come without a certain amount of investment to make it all possible. Naledi?
Yes, indeed, Kathy. I'll just by listening to the listeners, it shows that, you know, there are contending views about language. And this is the beauty of the space that I decided to dedicate my life to, because I'm very passionate about us seeing language as a resource in the society instead of seeing it as a problem. So we are advocating for multilingualism because we live in a multilingual context, so we don't have a choice but to be multilingual. And with that comes a lot of resources that we can use across multiple languages. And I just want to end off with a quote from S.E.K. Mqhayi, one of the famous profound writers within isiXhosa literature, who said, I'll first say it in Xhosa, zingangakhuli na imbaleki xa ezemidlalo zifundiswa ngesiXhosa. Zingangakhuli na iinkuni xa ezokulima zifundiswa ngesiXhosa. Zingangakhuli na iinkomo xa ezobuhlali zifundiswa ngesiXhosa. Zingangakhuli na ikhaphetshu xa ezolimo zifundiswa ngesiXhosa. He phrased these questions to say, will the athletes not perform if they are taught about running in isiXhosa? Will the trees not grow if agriculture is taught in isiXhosa? Will the cows not be well or not be looked after well or not survive if the person who is teaching agriculture is teaching the person in isiXhosa? So the context of this quote was that he was challenging the colonial mindset that devalues African languages in education, to say that knowledge is not dependent on the language in which it is taught, whether it's farming, whether it's medicine, whether it's pharmaceutical studies. It does not limit the success or the growth of that particular field. So in this, we are saying we're strongly advocating for indigenous African languages to be seen in parity together with English and Afrikaans, and for them to be seen as they are part of the languages that can be used to drive intellectual debates and also be used as languages of teaching and learning in the classroom. And there's a lot that we can take from African languages that is a resource within the teaching and learning space.
All right. Naledi, let me thank you for your time. Simon, thank you as well.
Kathy, I thank you very much.
Top stories at 11. Mary Padi expelled again from the MK party and talks underway for the next phase of Gaza ceasefire. For SAFM News, I am Ondelambana and a very good morning. The Umkhonto weSizwe party has again expelled its first Mpumalanga convener, Mary Padi, from the party. This despite the ruling of the High Court in Mpumalanga reinstating her. Earlier today, Padi served with an expulsion letter while attending at the provincial legislature ahead of Premier Mandla Ndlovu's State of the Province address. The MK party's provincial convener, Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, says Padi has continued to violate the party's constitution.
Remember, the order was there. She was reinstated. She behaved in a way that she violated again the party's constitution. She was suspended on the 3rd of February. She continued to violate the party's constitution. Now it's cancelled membership.
The city of Tshwane has warned that South Africans who have registered food outlets, including taco spaza shops on behalf of ineligible foreign nationals, face arrest. Today is the deadline for the registration of the businesses. President Cyril Ramaphosa had ordered the registration of the businesses in November last year in response to issues of food safety. This followed cases related to food poisoning in which at least 20 children died. The metro has processed over 4,600 registrations so far. Member of Mayoral Committee on Economic Development, Sarah Mabotsa, says they've discovered instances of fronting.
Another problem that is very serious, where you find that our South Africans, they are fronting. They want to register on behalf of the foreign nationals. But I also want to caution them that what they're doing is very wrong and it's illegal because they're going to be arrested. But at the same time, very dangerous in a sense that you find that you register the person and you put that person in your own house. They have got this potential of having to take over their properties. All the people are complaining, say, but you know what, I allow this foreign person to build a shop here. Now I want to evict the person. He said, no, you have to pay back. People are going to end up losing their own title deeds.
Police have confiscated dagga worth nearly 500,000 rand in Tableview in Cape Town following a tip-off. Spokesperson Wesley Twigg says officers have also arrested 2 suspects.
On the premises, the members found 102 dagga plants, 4,000 gram dry dagga and cultivation equipment. A 51-year-old male and a 42-year-old female were arrested on charges of cultivation and dealing in dagga. They will appear in the Cape Town magistrates on the mentioned charges.
The Solidarity Movement says it is concerned about the diplomatic tension between South Africa and the United States. A delegation from the movement, which includes Afrikaner interest group AfriForum, met with representatives of the Trump administration in Washington. They discussed concerns on issues including the expropriation bill, which President Cyril Ramaphosa signed into law last month. The movement alleges that the legislation seeks to forcefully take land from the white owners. The movement's head of international liaison, Jaco Kleinhans.
We are willing to use our contacts in America to the benefit of all in South Africa. So I think the accusations of treason are based on false information. We are not in America at the moment to engage with the Trump administration and with the American Congress in any way to have anything negative installed against South Africa. Our visit to America are primarily focused to the benefit of the South African economy and the people of South Africa.
Egypt says Israel and Hamas have started intensive discussions in Cairo on the next phase of the Gaza ceasefire. The first phase is set to expire tomorrow, but the agreement says the truce remains in effect during negotiations. The BBC's Yolanda Nell has the details.
Israel sent its negotiators to Cairo after Hamas handed over the remains of 4 hostages in exchange for the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. Nearly 60 hostages are still held in Gaza. The Israeli authorities believe 24 are alive. The second phase of the ceasefire is supposed to see further exchanges for their release, as well as a full end to the war. Ahead of the talks, an Israeli official said that the military would not leave a strategic corridor of land along the Gaza-Egypt border. That pullout was part of the ceasefire deal, and an Israeli refusal could trigger a crisis with Hamas, as well as key mediator Egypt.
Recapping the top story, the Umkhonto weSizwe party has again expelled its first Mpumalanga convener, Mary Padi, from the party. This despite the ruling of the High Court in Mpumalanga reinstating her. I am Ondelambana for SFM News Headlines at 11:30.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting,
Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
And then, how? SK, where are you going with that stuff?
My dog, I'm going whale watching. New hobby, you see. Finally going out to explore the world. Giri levels, Dwana.
I see the life jacket, but I don't know how an inflatable boat, megaphone, and a fishing rod fits into all of this.
How else am I going to get to the whales, Bongs? I need the boat. The megaphone is to do my whale calls, and the fishing rod, it's called ambience. Ambience. If you don't get it, forget about it.
Okay, but SK, you know there aren't any whales here in Germiston Lake.
Ooh, Shem, Mr. Know-it-all. Whales live in the water, and Germiston Lake has water.
Hey, sure, Ntwana, go whale watching in Germiston Lake. Me, I'll tune into Whale with Steve Buckshall, Sundays at 5 p.m. only on S3.
The whispers in the morning as I look in your...
This February, the month of love and self-care, at SAFM we're celebrating with you, spreading love to all. Let's embrace kindness, connection, and self-care. And as always, SAFM will continue leading the conversations that move us through love, wellness, and everything in between. This month, let's love ourselves, love each other, and keep the conversation going. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
'Cause I'm your lady, and you are my man.
Imoto is the name of the song. Our Friday wind down guest this morning, Professor, real name Mkhonzeni Langa, a South African kwaito musician. Professor, good morning, good morning, good morning to you. Thank you so much for coming onto the show this morning.
Sanibonani, ngiyanilela.
It's such a pleasure to have you with us on the Friday wind down. And, you know, last year you caused quite a bit of a stir, hey? And your fans were asking questions. There was talk about potential retirement. Where did all of that come from?
I think it was just a misunderstanding. I meant to say I don't get as much pressure as I used to get because I'm no longer on the mainstream. So it's no longer like before now. Hey, manje, it's December, Professor must release. So I'm taking my time now. And I'm so blessed that abantu basathanda vele nomsebenzi omningi engiwenzile njalo. So wisho kakhulu mina. I say retirement yona, no, this is lifetime. It gives you lifetime. Impilo yami yonke.
Of course, people are putting you under pressure to release because they want you to be the song that plays at the end of the year. You know, at that countdown, the New Year's Eve countdown, they want your song to be the one that's number one on the playlist.
Yeah, and I do appreciate that, cool. But hey, that comes with the pressure sometimes. Nami ngiyasabanyana ukuthi yo phela ikhatha ayifani, and also one is aging also on the other hand.
You're 47 this year, Professor, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So if you think about your life as a musician today, as a 47-year-old, you're 3 years shy of 50, which I think 50 is a significant milestone. And you compare your career to when you were a youngster. What would you say maybe the top 3 biggest differences have been?
I think, number one, isikhulisa ukuthi yabana manje at 40 yonke into iyaqala. Yes, we used to say life begins at 40. So afuna ukukhuluma manga engqondweni yami mina mangikhula izigaba engizivile. So I don't know if I can try and say it in English, but mhlawumbe ngicela ngisho ngesiZulu so that mhlawumbe ngizokwazi ukukhipha the way ngifuna ukukhipha ngakhona.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Yeah. So mawufika we-industry ufika, you want to impress abantu abakuphethe. I mean the business side of it ukuthi labe ngikhona bengisekalayo, so I must make sure ukuthi I produce or I write or I feature or nami I release ngoba irrelevant ukuthi zibuye lapho. Isikhathi siyahamba, but now mase kufika isikhathi sokuthi kumele uzimele. Uhlala you are left behind because when you feel like abantu bacabanga ukuthi I can't do it anymore. So now when you're trying, you are fighting the business side more than ukuthi unature into yakho uyiphile. So ngifacile leyo nto la whereby I felt ukuthi hayi no man. Bona bayabona ukuthi I'm no longer on the mainstream, sengikwenzile, but no one is going to tell me ukuthi no, khula manje baso. So now I'm fighting abantu abangisizayo or abantu engisebenza nabo because ngifuna ukuthi ba-understand ukuthi ngisakwazi ukwenza but ngokwebusiness akusizi ngale ndlela ekufanele kwenzeke ngayo. So ama-challenges engiwatholizayo kakhulu angazi noma ngiphendule ngale question ubuza ngayo.
No, I think I understand what you're saying, Professor, because basically you're saying as a younger artist, you're under pressure to impress the label. You're under pressure to sort of conform to whatever it is that they are putting down as a checklist for you. But as you age rather, you become more confident in your own voice. So the battles you're fighting are now more in the boardroom, right? They're about the terms and conditions under which you must do your work versus just, pushing to release a song that you really are making sure that whatever it is that you're putting out there also is benefiting you as the artist. I think that's what you were saying. Have I captured it well?
Exactly. On top of that, to add lapho, and it comes the time la now usumdala, like maybe now is the time la so funny nabo Brahu nabo ban, like you were saying, I'm 50 now. So in London I had this plan about hey when I'm 50, so many fun and babang pay about Spatman about one man. But because I could cost up so much good business with you, I must release so much music, I must be relevant, I must always be on the mainstream in Chile on the layer. But by the grace of God, abantu shame mina personally abantu abazange bafune but demanded kakhulu for me to release. I understand ukuthi now like it's December sikhumbula professor but uthando banalo for what I've done. Yo shame angikwazi ukucompare na anything. So into engisizile. So I understand amanye ama artists yiso lesikhathi where now you need to prove yourself, you're trying so hard. Fika amapiano now you must have my piano song out there, pressure and all, forgetting what now you are aging, maybe now who's coolest manje ufane nalabo abakuphethe.
And I'm interested because part of how you describe yourself now, you said that you're not mainstream anymore. What does that mean, to not be mainstream anymore?
It means njengamanje nje mongangibuza ukuthi ngirelease nini, which means you're not even aware. Umuntu ongangibuza ngingasabuzi. Umuntu ongangibuza umuntu engihlangana naye emgaqweni athi yo man asawazi umculo wakho man nanti urelease nini ushawa amahlobo uthi yazi I just dropped an EP, so no one is aware. So izinto azisafana, akusafani nokuthi everyone abantu abaningi bayamazi professor but not exactly ukuthi bayamuzwa now and then yabo akusho yi-mainstream leyo ukuthi igezana kanjani angiyazi kodwa ungazi ukuthi i-effect uyayizwa mase ungasekho lapho.
Ish, and that must hurt quite a bit, eh? Because you put your hard work and energy into these projects, so to bump into people asking you, Kanti, when are you going to release music again? That time it was the day of the release. It was the day of the launch.
Yeah, boy. Yes.
But what would you say is the cause of that? Is it not having the support or the name of a big label behind you? Is it releasing music independently? Why do you think that there is that big change?
I think it's the same thing in show. We see masingena. When we enter singena, I mean contracts are there, deals are there. Uyangena khona, but khona parts that we don't talk about. Brother to brother or sister to sister, kanjalo nje thina as abantu abamnyama. Asikhuluma ngale part ukuthi when is the right time for me to grow, yabo? Not grow out of the contract because somebody your contract is benefitisa. Because I find some musicians when it's time for them ukuthi bazidefine kahle ukuthi okay now go professor manje now it's time to give and share the thing now abanye abezayo. Now you start you are 47 and you are 50 for that matter. Now you're fighting I'm a package. I'm a contract but lento leyo uyiyona usakwazi ukuyishare sokuba nama frustrations so yiyo i-problem ebakhona kakhulu. So nomuntu mayibuza ngathi undermine kanti honestly they can't abasakutholi awukho, you are no longer there and now ugcina so ufuna ukukwata and but understand that later ukuthi if ngizula nami ngizosho yo uNkulunkulu ungqobele la because yonke into ezaphambi kwethu uNkulunkulu kumele sinqobele. But because we got caught up so much with business we forget those zinto zokukhuleka ukuthi manje sobesikhathi sengiventure for lento entsha manje sengikhulile uNkulunkulu wami ube nami. We forget because manje labantu labo usebenza nabo ufila ngathi senisempini nabo because manje you no longer conducive for sekumele nabo babheke futhi ekubhizinisi kwabanye abezayo. So the problem enkulu engiyibonile but ngiyabonga namanje ukuthi at least abantu bangireminder now and then mangihlangana nabo bathi futhi siyabonga ngosukwenzile. So lokho on its own it means abantu abafaki too much pressure on me.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I think that, conversations like this help us appreciate the different challenges that artists are facing, right? And, what you're saying about the kind of contracts that artists enter into and the extent to which those contracts benefit individuals at their peak and, when perhaps they are not at their peak, what is in those T's and C's that people need to be looking out for. Professor is our Friday wind down guest for this morning. So yes, we're entering the weekend dancing because he's one of the legends of Kwaito in this country. Hey wena, angitshontshe nix mina. Hey.
Good morning, Kathleen and the team. Wow, this is a big weekend. The end of the month. It's a big weekend. You make me dancing at work now. My favorite one. My legend, Professor. Good morning, sir. I love you, brother. Wow, nice music. Keep on pumping. Asanda Ado.
Princess Cathy, good morning to you. Good morning to your team. Great show always. It's good to hear your voice again. It's Uncle JJ, the truck driver, back in South Africa from vacation. Good morning to Professor. What a good music. What a good music, Kwaito. I would like to ask from Professor, what is the meaning of Imoto Injonje Mali? The car has stole the money. What is the meaning of that song?
Professor? So what does it mean? Imonti Chonchimali, what happened? Why did the car steal the money?
Okay, remember I was in the Jew Mina Notizo. So when our thing is to fade out, I felt like, I've worked with the Pignas. Like, I mean, come on, I've worked with everyone. Was came up with a song. What is happening to me now? So so when I got the chance to go solo album, I felt like wonke umuntu ulindele ukuthi isiphi style engizosenza noma ngizokwenza. But into enginayo emqondweni, I didn't have ukuthi ngizokwenzani, but bengifuna nje ukukhombisa lento engiyilambele kakhulu ukuthi kahle kahle apart from wonke lokuxabana nani nongaboni ngasolinye, mina into engifuna ukuyenza kakhulu is to get what's mine and get out. But ngayisho in a form of nje imali, because abantu bathanda baba excited ngohola imali kanjalo. So ngabeka in those words ukuthi nje I'm getting what is due to me. It's time. So kahle kahle sikhuluma kanjalo ukupopa ngelingo yasekhaya.
News headlines: owners of food outlets including Tuck and Spaza shops, the Region G municipality in Johannesburg, have accused government of failing to adequately inform members of the public about the registration of their businesses. The Umkhonto weSizwe party has again expelled its first Mpumalanga convener, Mary Padi, from the party, and an organization that has worked closely with USAID-funded HIV organizations is concerned that the order to shut them down might result in an increase in infection rates among adolescent girls and young women. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Whether it is a CCMA referral, problems with a mechanic, or unfair blacklisting, Clientele legal plans are affordable, and you receive up to 670,000 rands worth of legal services per year. We cover civil, criminal, and labor-related matters. Our legal team will be your support 24 hours a day. SMS SAFM to 32195. that's SAFM to 32195. Clientele General is an authorized FSP and a licensed non-life insurer. T's and C's online. Standard rates apply.
Dis-Chem's Beauty Fair is here. It's time to treat yourself at your fabulous fragrance destination. Big date coming up? Find a fragrance that makes it unforgettable. Crushing it in the boardroom. Make an impression before you even speak. From fresh and floral to bold and unforgettable, get your perfect fragrance match at Dis-Chem's Beauty Fair. Hurry, deals end 16 March.
The Friday Wind Down. Kick off your weekend the right way.
Ay, dlala professor, dlala legend. Ezasekalawa. Siyabonga Cathy. Siyabonga professor. Siyabonga legend.
Hello, Sis Cathy. How are you, my sister? Sis Cathy, this is Leshke Kitsi, all the way from Maribogo Station, Northwest, Sis Cathy. I'm a first-time WhatsApper, Sis Cathy, but I'm listening to you every day. But only because Humpieno or the professor guy. Ola prof. Shapuzet Hotmanaka, Usketi. I like this guy. I always play his music, Usketi man. Camarada, please release something, Prayaka, professor. Even though I am a piano, no, Shai Kwaito. Shaito hot ekwaito prayami ubabonise ukuthi kwaito sasekhona professor. I love you mu Northwest mu Madibo Hotman. Let's take it danko.
Good morning, Cathy, and the SFM listeners. I think, Cathy, Professor can still produce good music. I think for him to say that he thinks that he has faded away, it's not a good idea. I think he mustn't pressurize himself. He must just produce music the way he knows better. And then I think we're gonna dance to his music for a long time, but he mustn't judge himself, you know. So he mustn't also pressurize himself into saying no. Now people like Amapiano or so on. He must just produce the type of music that he knows, because to me, he's a legend, and then he still has that ability to make us dance, you know. He must keep on producing music. We love him. We play his music each and every time we get a chance. So, Prof, go ahead with your music.
Yabona nje mazenza usiphithi. Yabona siphila kamnandi. Yabona sijaba kamnandi. Sonke impilo inzima. Sonke wasijabulisa abafisa uprofessor. Sabonga uprofessor Prawami. Windoda. Cathy, habo grand. Sabonga kakhulu mfethu. Please ask a professor for me ukuthi who are these women which was so in love with Abo DJ, or which was playing with Abo DJ? Who was this Jezebel women? Professor, what about Jezebel? I'll have Minangentung. It's a with DJ. Kishu Jezebel. What about Jezebel, Professor?
We are in conversation with Professor. He is our Friday wind down guest. Professor, did you hear from the mouth of your fans? People, of course, absolutely loving your music. So many people still appreciate the music that you've given them over the years. Let me give you a chance to respond to those voice notes.
I'm hearing so much love. I'm getting so much love from Abantu and young Jablisa all the time. Just exactly what I was telling you, that at least when I hear people talking like that, hey, ngiyajabula, because nami myself, I'm a fan to some artists. I mean, I'm Fumanga nje. So now I know how it feels. Hey, man, umuntu omthandayo, ungathi usambone spacing. Yeah, but I appreciate the fact that ba-aware ukuthi umusic engiwenzayo ngiwenza ngothando and ngithatha isikhathi. Yiyo kuphela into engiyicelayo ukuthi nje ngicela ukuba yimi ngingabi yilo professor ocontrolekayo ngezinto ezithize behind that people don't know. So this is my promise to them now, to my fans. No, ngiyabonga ukuthi ba-aware ukuthi ngikuphi manje and bahamba ngephisi yami, ngiyabonga. But your music, ngiyayenza le announcement right now. I'm not stopping. Ayikho lento yokustopha. Angeke kuphiwe uNkulunkulu into akuphe yona then wena. Angakasho anything. Ngisazosho okuningi because ngithunyiwe nami ukuthi ngisho ngisho I believe so. So as long as the music wami uphilisa abantu, healing people and helping people lapha nalapha, because I know music uyaphilisa nami ngiyazi South Africa, music South Africa uyaphilisa. I'm a fan. So yeah.
I love that message, right? And it says that you're not just doing music for the sake of music. So for those fans that were anxious, not sure about what the future holds for Professor, he absolutely is going to continue doing music because that's what he believes has been put on this earth to do. As long as it's giving people life and it's making them happy, he says that is what he will do. How did you end up with the name Professor?
Thank you. I think Leo, I will answer Isha combine with the question how did I come up with the title Mkonzeni? Professor is actually my name. Professor Mkonzeni, those are both my names. We ID given by my parents. So I started with getting the stage name. I tried until but Professor the right.
Oh wow! Okay, so it's actually on your ID. Which university did your parents expect to see you in, Professor? Where you are the vice chancellor? Huh? They had very, very different ideas for you.
I think you think reminder I mean why nginenhlanhla engaka okwami kuba lula kangaka negama ngistrugglishanga ngalo ngiyazi inhlupheko ziyaba khona emhlabeni but ayikho engikhumbulayo edlula ukuthi abantu bangazi ngamagama ami oyi2 bangibize ngamagama amabili engibize abazali bami. That is a blessing.
The professor of music will say you are, right? Professor of music. Let me go to Nduduzo. Nduduzo, you're calling from Durban. Sorry, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. How are you?
I'm well, Nduduzo. Go for it.
Cathy, you have a legend there. I'm from Durban. I'm a big friend of Prof and Big Nas. I want to tell you a story, a live story. Big Nas was performing at Potchefstroom in 2010. They had just released that #1 track killer called Umlilo. And normally after Big Nas perform, the stage is shut. There's no other Kwaito artist during that time that could come after Big Nas. Prof came with, "Oh, will you follow me, my children?" The entire stadium erupted. What is significant is Katie? We were in Potchefstroom, not even in Durban, their local home ground, where he is the captain, by the way. If there was a Hall of Fame of Kwaito, Professor would be sitting right at the top. Prof, my friend, keep well. You are blessed. We love you.
Prof, do you remember that moment that Nduduzo was speaking about?
Oh, ama-moments ayafika. The more bekhuluma ngawo ayafika. Ngiyabonga. And that time, I think, lesikhathi khuluma ngaso when Mampintsha, Armashesha, everyone was still alive. We were a movement. Trust me, izinto ziyenzeka because life. We were a movement. We were just not nje ama-artists with it was Big Nas, Tizozo, Professor, character. We were a movement. My memories are not now.
You're absolutely right. It was very much a movement, and a movement that swept over this entire country, right? Andile,
Yeah.
you're also out in Durban. Good morning.
Good morning, Sister. How are you?
I'm good. Andile, Professor's on the line.
Yes. I'm good. I wish I can put my point in Zulu, since your previous guests were talking about the language. So even Uputum Konzeni, I know Uguti, he's a down-grounded cultural man, even on his songs. Ne? So I would request that I put my point across in Zulu, ne? So that we can promote our language.
Andile, go ahead.
Yes. Uputum Konzeni, sithanda ukubonga kudala kakhulu mfethu ngento osenzeleyo no Andile la eChesterville. Nisikhulisile bobhuti bethu ngomculo wenu omnandi osikhulisa, even your lyrics ne, it's not about ukuthi kuyadanswa kwenziwani, but umlayezo okumculo wakho usikhulisile kakhulu wasenza amadoda. And ngiyakhumbula sisebhizi ngoStamford 144, we met you, even sihlangana nawe kumnyama banibani, but you are umuntu ophansi, ozithobile, ophuma ekhaya eli-right, obonayo ukuthi ukhuliswe ngesintu and wazi abantu hlonipha abantu. So ngikufisela nje impilo ende, my brother, nokuyithoba kwakho. Life inenkinga zakhona, but ngendlela othatha ngayo izinto, I can see ukuthi umuntu oyithobile and usazophila. Challenges are always going to be there in life, but keep it going, my brother. Thank you so much for ukuthi nisikhulise ngomculo omnandi. Siyabonga kakhulu futhi.
Ngiyabonga mfethu, inkosi ibusisa madoda ekukhanye mfethu, akukhanye kakhulu, khanye.
Siyabonga.
All right, Andile, thank you so much for that. Professor, I'm just thinking about the journey that you've traveled. Obviously, when you start being called a music legend, it's not only a tribute to the kind of music that you have made, but it also signals a thing of age to say you're a bit older now. And you have this young crop of artists that are coming up. You also have this, Amapiano sound that has sort of swept over South Africa and into other parts of the world. How do you navigate the space? Because you want to make sure people, when they hear your music, they're getting up, they're dancing. It comes with a whole vibe, right? How do you stay true to your vibe while also, being aware of what the youngsters are doing and not necessarily getting trapped in that?
My sister, I'm going to say this, okay, it's almost, it's stressing because I can't really say ukuhlanganisa kwami or position myself ngendlela ethize. But ikhola leqeda ukuphuma just said something important that I overlook most of the time. Yazi akulula ukukhuluma ngefamily yakho, but I think iyo effect enkulu endlela engakhona. When we first came to Joburg in 1996, we were just brothers. My brother, umdala, ubheki, ubeyini character, Mr. X, or something. So, I mean, I've always had that thing, angimelanga ngiphoxe noma ngikhuluma into ezophoxa ngimenze into ezophoxa. So ispace sethu, ispace sami, ngikhona energy yami, wonke umuntu engisebenza nayo, I feel like ngiyamconverta kuqala ukuthi angi-understand ukuthi no, maybe ulindele uprofessor la ukuthi izofika la 1 2 imoto entuthu imali iphuma hit. No, angisiyo lowo muntu. Let's spend time. I collaborate with umuntu, not ngengoma, because now I'm planning for a #1 hit. So I think into engenza kube lula, even also ngikwazi ukuphila nalabafana abancane, because I think I understand the character qala, and then I think bathanda the character, then nami ngithanda i-character yabo because nami ngabe ngiyahetheka khona abanye abathenana down kabuhlungu and then you just understand njengomuntu omdala ukuthi okay yilabo abanjalo, but I feel so blessed ukuthi uNkulunkulu indlela yami uyangisondeza ebantwini abangi-understandayo, so I don't struggle a lot mase ngikhona ba-expect ezinye izinto ngigcine sengi-caught up nami ngezinye izinto trying to fit in. So ngiyabonga ngalokho uNkulunkulu i-character yami yenze yaba bright iyabonakala, and I pray about it ukuthi zimayikho izinto ezi-hidden ezi-behind because nami ngumuntu kunezinto engizilwayo nami kumele ziphume kimi, yabona ngendlela engi-reacta ngayo ezinye izinto, even if I'm a victim of a certain thing, but akumelanga nami ngiresponda ngenye indlela, understanding ukuthi ukuthandwa abantu also akufaki pressure kodwa kuyakuguida ukuthi yazi abantu bakuthatha so nawe behave ngendlela right, and I really appreciate it.
Okay. Professor, tell us about your latest projects as we wrap up the interview. Anything that you want our listeners and your friends to know about?
It's an EP. The reason why I dropped an EP is because I couldn't fit all the tracks with my album. I've always had that problem yokufaka ama-tracks amaningi album since Galawa days. So I decided, okay, there's an easy way, an EP, or just sneak. Into encane nje kahle kahle ukuthi beze nje ukuthi mangiza nge-full album banga-expecta. So this project inabantu abeze ngothanda abosesiunathi, okay, Malum Cool Cat, Kabza the Small, Moromba Peach, and nabanye abasha. It's just Professor, man. Uzozwa nje ukuthi Professor, I'm not trying to filter in the fusion of everything engiyenzayo nalabantu engicollaborate. Iyenza sense masiyilalela ukuthi sifane no Kabza, let's try me element so, but I didn't want it to be obvious ukuthi sifana no Kabza, then he's waiting for Amapiano. So ngisebenza nalowo muntu nge-energy yakhe nami ngeyami and then we collaborate. So bazithanda kakhulu, imnandi inama-messages ma-grand, iyadansisa, iyajayivisa futhi.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming onto the show, Professor. As you heard, he's dropped his EP, and it certainly has a lot of tunes that you can look forward to. So please go to any credible streaming platform, download it, and support legitimate music so that the artists can also get paid. All right, that's where we leave it on this Friday edition of the Friday Wind Down. Show back with you again Monday morning between 9 and midday.
Okay, Lhasa, we are recording 3, 2, 1, go.
A cold case is opened 39 years later after the body of a young man is discovered in a derelict building. There are 4 suspects. Suspect 1, a clergyman. Suspect 2, an eminent entrepreneur.
I really, those people are always shady.
Suspect 3, a community worker.
Hey, what are you saying?
And suspect 4, a wheelchair-bound husband caring for his wife.
Hey, and Nevele, you can't.
Each has a secret to hide. As their lies unravel, the people that they love the most begin to wonder what else they might be capable of. Nothing in this case is black and white. Can you ever really know the people closest to you? What secrets have they buried? Tune into Unforgotten Season 1, Monday to Wednesday at 9 p.m. Starts 24 February only on S3. Tabo, don't tell me that the script freaked you out. Where are you?
The Blue Diamonds want to display superior performance and shine with victory in their opening match of the new season. But the newcomers, Ezemvelo ladies, are on a mission to demonstrate why they deserve to be in the Big Girls League. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Gauteng tackles KZN. Catch Mzansi Queens of the Beautiful Game. JPW Ladies versus Ezemvelo Ladies. The Sunday 2 March at 11:30 a.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available at your fingertips on SABC Plus. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of the book The Thing with Zola by Zibu Sitole, read by Lerato Mvelase.
Hey, you? I hope you aren't bringing home a tiny stranger to bring her sister to the airport. But there Aunt Mina had been, as immoderate as ever, rubbing salt in all of Zola's old wounds. That had been 6 months ago, and nothing much had changed until the botched interview with Mbali. "The porridge is cold in the pot," Nomsebenzi announced the minute Zola emerged from her room. "Warm some up and get ready. Mina and Zozo are on their way already. We're going to the plaza to get some curtains." Zola had known this wouldn't be a good day, but she hadn't counted on it being so bad. A 3-taxi ride to plaza with her loud aunt gossiping about everyone around them, and her cousin Zozo repeating the latest drama about her boyfriend Thabo was the last thing Zola needed. "I'll stay home." Zola scooped the congealed brown porridge into a bowl. "I'm waiting for a response to my email," she added quickly. Nomsebenzi stared knowingly at Zola. She knew Zola could check her email on her phone from anywhere. "I'm not saying this to be hurtful, but someone has to tell you this, Zola," Nomsebenzi said seriously. "Rather me than someone on the street." Zola could see her mother peeling off the kid gloves she'd been coddling her with since she'd returned from Germany. Reluctantly, she sat down to her cold porridge with a side helping of Nomsebenzi's famed straight talk. "My girl, you have your nose so high in the air, you can't even see what's in front of you," Nomsebenzi said. "What do you want me to say, Mama? You think you are better than everyone. If you didn't, you wouldn't have been so rude to that man in Bali, and maybe you'd have a job now." Not wanting to even witness Zola's reaction to her intentional delivery, Nomsebenzi disappeared into her room with perfect timing. Zola's appetite left with her mother. She couldn't stomach another spoonful of her breakfast. It was one thing to know what her mother thought, but it still stung to hear her say it. And Zola knew it was all her fault. Her attitude was the reason she'd missed out on the only job opportunity she'd had since she came home. It was also the reason she hadn't been able to stay in Germany. Chapter 4. Regret. If you asked on a good day, Zola would tell you she'd done everything to stay in Germany. But on the taxi ride to Johannesburg with her sweaty arm pressed tightly against her cousin Zozo, she knew that wasn't completely true. "You don't have to leave," Gunther had said softly as they'd walked back from the Oslander Behörde. Zola had received an email stating that her visa wouldn't be renewed, but somehow felt it was some mistake she could fix by talking to someone face-to-face at the immigration authority. That wasn't how it had worked out. She wasn't sure how exactly, but she blamed Gunther. "Did you hear what the woman said?" Zola had whispered through clenched teeth. "I have no visa, so no, I can't just stay. It's absolutely ridiculous." Gunther had been downcast for the rest of the way home, until he'd met Zola. He'd never taken anything seriously in his life. He'd never had to, and since that day their relationship had become his entire identity. He now didn't have any friends Zola didn't like, didn't wear clothes that Zola didn't approve of, and he had actually finished his degree, much to the shock of his parents. These days, he had a stable job at the university. He was studying further. He had a plan for the future, all because of Zola, and it all fell apart without her. He followed her into their apartment and looked around. Everything in it reminded him of her. And even as she moodily banged the bathroom door behind her, he knew one thing. He didn't want her to leave. "Marry me," he stammered through the closed bathroom door. Inside the small room, Zola was quiet. She couldn't move, even held her breath. The silence in the apartment grew thick and heavy. "Zola!" Zola flushed the toilet and washed her hands, slowly lathering the soap under the running tap. Zola was a planner. She had already imagined every detail of her life, from her dream proposal to the inevitability of growing old alongside her soulmate. This particular scenario had never occurred to her. Knowing he was just a few centimeters on the other side of the closed door, she stood for a moment before opening it slowly, which gave Gunther enough time to stand up and straighten out. "Marry me," Gunther repeated as she came out. Zola blinked. Seeing him say the words made it even less real to her. Her lips moved, but no words emerged. Her thoughts drifted in her head like fireflies, just out of reach. "It just makes sense, Zola. We can get it done at the courts and then you could stay. I mean, it wouldn't even look suspicious. We could easily pass whatever test they throw our way," Gunther said quickly. Even as the words rolled out of his mouth, he knew it wasn't the right thing to say. "A visa marriage?" Zola said slowly, her eyes filling with tears. Gunther took a deep breath and wondered if it was too late to take it back. Say something more romantic. "That's what you think of me?" Zola asked, her voice shaking. "I'm some poor African you're helping out. My magnanimous white savior saving me from my sad life back home." The blood drained from Gunther's face. Surely she knew that wasn't how he felt about her. Not after all these years. Not after he'd willingly dreamt Zola's own dreams alongside her. Zola pushed past Gunther and grabbed her handbag. "I should have known this was what you were about. You and your posh family patting each other's backs every time you did even the smallest thing for me." Droplets of spit flew from her mouth. "Gold star for you for housing me all this time. God knows what would have become of me without you." "Zola, please. I don't understand why you're saying this. You know I love you," Gunther pleaded, his heart pounding in his chest. "And aren't you the saint?" Zola slammed the door behind her. The memory of that conversation made Zola's body itch, even though in the end she'd put it down to the stress of having her life fall apart. In the weeks that followed, Gunther had seemed tense, and he hadn't asked her to marry him again. "Thinking about your Italian stallion," Zozo whispered now in the taxi, her eyes lit with a naughty glint. Zola faked a smile. "He's not Italian." "Whatever. You're thinking about him, ne? Aren't you?" Zozo giggled. "I know that smile. That's how I smile when I think about Thabo." She bit her bottom lip suggestively. Zola rolled her eyes. Zozo's stories never lacked any detail, and her graphic description of Thabo had found a permanent place in Zola's mind. Now, at the mention of his name, a vivid image of Thabo walking nude across his room came to mind. The slow roll of his buttocks described by Zozo, with salacious slurps of her tongue. Zola shuddered at the thought.
That was another episode of the book The Thing with Zola, written by Zibu Sitole, read by Lerato Mvelase. The book is available online at www.penmacmillan.co.za and in all leading bookstores countrywide. It is broadcast on SAFM at 11:45 Monday to Thursdays on The Talking Point. It is produced for the station by Vovi Patala, read by Lerato Mvelase. Technical production, Wiseman Manmele, Nanda Koza, and Tato Mapuruma.
Twelve o'clock on Friday, the 28th of February 2025. A very warm welcome to Updated Noon here on SAFM. Leading the conversation, I'm Sakina Kamwendo. Coming up in the next hour.
There will be no extension. We are not going to make any recommendation to the president. There was enough time for people to register from the extension made in December.
Today marks the final deadline for business owners to register with municipalities in which they operate, and SASSA welcomes the findings of the investigative report into COVID-19 SRD grant. Coming up in sport.
Busy weekend of sport to tell you about, but can Afghanistan upset Australia and completely change the Champions League? I'll tell you about that later on.
John Hirigo with those details in the second half.
Thank you, Sakina. Top stories at 12. Spaza shop owners disgruntled over registration information, and Mary Padi expelled again from the MK party. For SAFM News, I am Ondela Mbana, and a very good day. Owners of food outlets including Tak and Spaza shops of the Region G municipality in Johannesburg have accused government of failing to adequately inform members of the public about the registration of their businesses. Today is the last day for the registration of the businesses. President Cyril Ramaphosa had ordered the registration of the businesses in November last year in response to issues of food safety. This followed cases related to food poisoning in which at least 20 children died. Chairperson of the shops in the municipality, Cathy Mohlahlana, says officials are not giving residents important information such as the required supporting documents and the fees needed for the registration process.
People from last year were registered. Till today, their papers, they haven't been approved because of Bona themselves. They don't even visit to check your shop how it is. They only look documents, but to come and verify in field, and they don't do workshops again to say, people, if you want to open a spaza shop for locally, this is what you do. We need 1, 2, 3, at least bafeba to information. Now people don't have information on them.
Meanwhile, the eThekwini municipality in KwaZulu-Natal says all 5 of its business registrations offices are packed. Deputy Chairperson of Mayoral Committee on Economic Development, Phili Ndlovu, says they have approved 1,400 of the 6,000 applications they have received so far.
But we have tried by all means to make the registration process very simple, very easy. Hence, I think even in some areas, we were actually just taking our guys and going to the area. It's not really difficult. If you have all the required documents, then, and it's not even an expensive process, I think as we explained more, that's when you started getting the numbers increase, because I just think it was a fear of unknown, but it's not a difficult process. It does not even take long.
The Umkhonto weSizwe party has again expelled its first Mpumalanga convener, Mary Padi, from the party. This despite the ruling of the High Court in Mpumalanga reinstating her. Earlier today, Padi was served with an expulsion letter while attending the provincial legislature ahead of Premier Mandla Ndlovu's State of the Province address. The MK party's provincial convener, Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, says Padi has continued to violate the party's constitution.
Remember, the order was there. She was reinstated. She behaved in a way that she violated again the party's constitution. She was suspended on the 3rd of February. She continued to violate the party's constitution. Now it's cancelled membership.
2 men have started to serve their lengthy jail terms after the High Court in Cape Town sentenced them yesterday for the murder of a 10-year-old girl in 2019. Cameron Julius and Chadwin Williams were sentenced to 25 years on the murder charge and slapped with hefty sentences on 9 other charges. 3 people were initially implicated in the crimes, but one of them died while in prison. Police spokesperson Anelisiwe Manyana.
Introductory reports revealed that on Sunday, the 8th of December 2019, Aisha Kelly was sent to the tech shop with 3 of her friends when she was struck by a stray bullet. The victim was declared deceased at the scene by the medical personnel. The case was investigated by the anti-gang unit together with Prevention Unit detectives.
An organization that has worked closely with USAID-funded HIV organizations is concerned that the order to shut them down might result in an increase in infection rates among adolescent girls and young women. The project were funded under the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, PEPFAR. Yesterday, the Trump administration announced its termination of more than 90% of the USAID's foreign assistance awards. HIVSA says most of its programs, which deal with HIV prevention interventions and education, have come to a standstill following the order. The organization's CEO, Yashmita Naidu.
2016, adolescent girls and young women were 8 times more likely to get affected than their male counterparts. With the work done through the HIV prevention interventions such as DREAMS, we've been able to reduce that to them being 4 times more likely. Our concern is that we're going to see the infection rates climb and prevalence increase amongst adolescent girls and young women. Unfortunately, at this point in time, there is no contingency unless we get some kind of funding to keep the operations going. However, I do think that this is a good opportunity for government to step in and sort of lend a hand in terms of getting services to the most vulnerable.
Recapping the top story, owners of food outlets including tuck and spaza shops of the Region G municipality in Johannesburg have accused government of failing to adequately inform members of the public about the registration of their businesses. Today is the last day for the registration of the businesses. I am Ondalambana for SFM News Headlines at 12:30.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m. Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo.
Well, thanks so much, Ondela. Good afternoon, everybody. 7 minutes after 12. And, of course, that lead story in the news, a big one today. And this is, of course, the last day for spaza shops and food handling outlets to register in their various municipalities, failing which they will not be allowed to operate. Well, the Minister of COCTA made it crystal clear this morning that there will be no extension. But the Black Entrepreneur Alliance Women's Chapter has urged government to reconsider the registration deadline for spaza shop owners. So we'll hear what they have to say and juxtapose that to what's coming from government. And then some of the other stories that we're following up on, farmers in the poultry sector calling for proactive solutions and involvement of the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development following a warning of a resurgence of bird flu by the South African Poultry Association. I read about this the other day, and they were talking about a vaccination. And again, so many questions about how many birds are we talking about, you know, who's going to foot the bill for the mass vaccination, etc., etc. But if it is not done, what is the consequence of that going to be, etc.? So we'll check in on what's happening there. Then a story that we couldn't get to yesterday, we'll pick up again today. And this with regard to the increasingly violent stock theft criminality against small-scale farmers in the Eastern Cape. So we were hoping to speak to a farmer yesterday, and hopefully we'll be able to pick up on that today. And we understand that areas such as Qumbu, Mount Fletcher, Tsolo, Biti and Umtata are the most affected by these sort of attacks that have forced many owners to either abandon their businesses, or where the owners are murdered, you know, the families have suffered, leaving many women widowed and children orphaned because of this. So we'll try and follow up on that one again. And then the Department of Social Development says that there are significant threats of unauthorized access to the SRD, that's the Social Relief of Distress Grant application system. We'll talk to them about what was revealed there and, of course, the way forward. And the Special Investigating Unit, they're updating SCOPA on investigations conducted regarding the Unemployment Insurance Fund. And Eskom said that they are working on a new vending system for selling prepaid electricity tokens. And we're also keeping an eye on what's happening in the DRC. Scores of people killed following a bomb attack in that country. So all of those stories we're keeping an eye on, as well as Martin Creamer coming in for another update from the coalface.
Update at noon with Sakina Kamwendo, midday to 1 p.m.
The Cooperative Governance Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa says that there will be no further extensions regarding the registration of spaza shops and food handling outlets. Now, today marks the final day for business owners to register with municipalities in which they operate. The registration drive follows the deaths of more than 20 children last year from foodborne illnesses.
Today is a final date for the registration. There will be no extension, but anyone who will miss today can still go on Monday going forward to municipalities to apply, but not operating in a spaza shop or a food handling outlet. There was ample time. The extension from December, not to end of January, but to end of February. 2 months full after the festive season. Whatever logistical issue that a person might raise. But a person who decided yesterday to go and register just a day before the deadline will say there are logistical problems. I was at Tshwane yesterday in the city where they informed me that the flow of people has been very low from January up to now. A big chunk was before the first deadline of 21 days. Now, people who will decide to go to the registration today, they will make a call for the extension, and if you can respond to their call, you will never have it right. The best way, those who have applied, they know that they are the right people to operate the spaza shops. People who have not come forth, the majority of them, is because they know they are not going to be operating the spaza shops. They will be fronting, and there will be no room for fronting. A person who applied is the one who will use the spaza shop or the food handling outlet.
And that, of course, was the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Velenkosini Hlabisa. And today, of course, is that deadline, and we have SABC reporters out across the country just monitoring the situation for us, just to get a sense of whether people have managed to register and how that particular picture differs from one province to the next. And, of course, just trying to catch up with one of our reporters struggling with that at the moment. So we'll come back to the story and also catch up with the Black Entrepreneurs Alliance Women's Chapter, because they have also urged government to reconsider this deadline that has been set for today. But I think the minister very clear in his articulation and saying that there has been enough time and therefore there will be no excuses. So essentially what the minister is saying is that beyond today, if